few times. I got a few days, maybe I might be out of jail again. But the truth is getting out. And from the people who private message me, closer? Okay. And the people who try to who do private message me, tell me the things that they can't say publicly. Because a lot of them work for the very people who are behind the oppressive exploitation that we are all suffering under. Also, for me, myself, the first time I got kicked off of Facebook for mentioning the unmentionable, I actually felt guilty because I was programmed to feel guilty. You know, I mean, the innocent, victimized, chosen people. I went for all that. I really bought into it all. My life experience has put me through being on the front line for my entire life. As I got out of school, high school, I went into the service and I spent 2.5 years in Vietnam. I was there for both Tet 68 and 69, and I got to see a lot of stuff people don't see. I learned a lot of things that the average person would not have the opportunity to learn firsthand. And then I spent 4 years in the police department as a police officer working in a high crime area, and I got a lot of insights there. And then I went into the fire department, and from there, again, I learned a lot of things. And on 9/11, I was down there. I got down there on recall after the first 2 towers were down, and I got there before Building 7 came down. And I heard the explosion, and I saw the building come down. I spent the night working on the pile. I lost 343 firefighters that day. That's not counting the police and the civilians, of course. Since then, we've lost over 1,000 additional young firefighters from exposure to that toxic cocktail on 9/11. I go every year for a thorough checkup at 9 Metro Tech in Brooklyn headquarters. Now, the things that I've learned, the conclusions that I have arrived at myself, have led me to the same things that have been explained here in detail. I can't tell you how impressed I am to be amongst, I feel like I'm with family, really. I feel the soulmates out there. I'm so impressed with one of our wise men here, Cornkey, Mark Cornkey. Wow.
How?
If you research on that level, forget about it. You're in another world, you know. And that's what we need to know. That's what our children need to know, you know. And every other speaker who's spoken has been incredible. Now, this is all about freedom. This is about American core values. It's about not dropping the ball, but carrying on with the courageous actions of our founding fathers. When I think that, you know, I'm up against impossible odds, I just go back to the founding fathers and look at how they dealt with the issues that they were confronted with. It was only 3% of the population who rose up against King George III, upon whose holdings the sun never set. And look what happened. We ended up with the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution. And they created the first nation on earth that was dedicated toward giving power to the people. They got away from this rule by divine rule and the kings and all that stuff. It was all about the common man. And that's what was so great about America. Now, they developed the checks and balances, executive, judicial, legislative, and last but not least, freedom of the press, believing at a time when men had more integrity than they do today, that those checks and balances would be enough to keep the public aware of the things they needed to know so that they wouldn't fall into a tyrannical state as we currently are in. As the saying goes, when the people fear the government, you have tyranny. But when the government fears the people, you have democracy. Liberty. But let's be careful about democracy, because the founding fathers were never for democracy. They were for a constitutional republic, which is dedicated towards the rights of the man, the single person. And that's the essential difference between democracy, which is mob rule, or mobocracy by 51%, which can be achieved by whoever has the loudest speaker or the most lies. A constitutional republic. So we have an obligation to understand what patriots and veterans have done to give us an opportunity to have the greatest country in the world, the beacon of real hope. And we still have a big fight against, in front of us. But I do know that we can win. Why? Because truth is on our side. Amen. It's that simple. It is that simple. But our problem is, for those of us who do know, is how to get message out, how to get traction with the public. And they fear so much anybody who can really make that reach, who can electrify and unify the public. One such person was Jim Trafficant, who someone was speaking about. If you have a chance, look up the videos. Just Google him and you'll get him on videos. Jim Trafficant would have been an easy choice for public support and a president if he was allowed to live. We still have Jim Trafficants out there. We have a lot of people who have the ability and the fire to lead America back towards what it was intended to be. Before I left here, before I left to come here, I had a bunch of notes with quotes and points that I wanted to touch with sources in order to leave you with a much better presentation than firing from the hip as I currently am. But I am so honored to be here. And I want to tell you, when I started over 5 years ago, there was only one nut on Facebook. His name was Trevor Levante, right? And he was out there alone, all by himself. And I used to think, Jesus Christ, every time I go on, which is almost every day, he's already there. Doesn't Jesus. But he has been an inspiration to me to keep on fighting and never give up. And what I've learned from over the years is that even though when I started, I used to say, come on now, I know you're out there because I can hear you breathing, that there'd be no likes, there'd be no comments whatsoever, because I was venturing into the sadly predictable knee-jerk reactionary response you get whenever you venture into the taboo. Ooh, you can't say that. Well, I started saying that. But I guess what worked with me was that I am a real veteran, I am a real police officer, I am a real firefighter who is out there on the front line and gets to see what the public does not normally get to see. So I got into a position where I could see through the lies. And then the next step was to try to get that message out, to get it to people who had been put into a trance. Most of Americans and the world live in an illusion that has been created by the power of the mainstream media. The mainstream media is our most powerful is their most powerful weapon of mass deception and public manipulation. With it, they have been able to indoctrinate us with their propaganda so that we see the world through our enemy's eyes and rendered incapable of seeing their lies. Now, with the power they have, with false flags and lies, they send our sons and daughters off to fight their proxy wars. And just to be clear, wars that serve the interests of Israel and the Zionist agenda. All right? I said it, and I stand by it. And I live in the town of Ramapo, and Ken is going to be up here later, and Denise, they can tell you, I'm surrounded by them. I live in a cul-de-sac where it's all ultra-Orthodox and Hasidic, and I've taken them on in town hall. I've taken on the town supervisor and the chief of police, who incidentally was sent to Israel for training, as are many of our chiefs of police and sheriffs. They're now being sent to Israel to train our police to be the first line of defense for not us, but for the people who use them to oppress us. Now they dress in black with all kinds of armor. Remember when they were just the neighborhood cop, you know, and people looked up to them and respected them? Now people fear them. And, you know, when I served as a cop, what got me through the situation, first of all, I always thought, and I still do, every citizen should put on a police officer's uniform and experience what it is to work in a high crime area as opposed to a well-to-do area where you're looked upon as a friend and a protector of the community. In a high crime area, you're looked upon as a threat. You're kind of feared and despised. But I went into Harlem, and I managed to get through it all and keep the respect of the perps. The perps have a saying, if you can't do the crime, don't do the time. They are career criminals, and that's the kind of criminal society that has evolved in certain areas. And what I did to protect myself against power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely was to constantly remind myself that there, but for the grace of God, goes you or I. I always remembered, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I remembered my training that told me then that I am here to serve and protect. I am a servant, a public servant, not a public lord. What has happened now, I believe there's been a Supreme Court decision that says police are not here to serve and protect you anymore. They're here to uphold the law, meaning to defend the oppressors and exploiters in our country, you know, who should be hung. Really. And,
we need a next second.
Yeah, and you know, so that's what we're dealing with the police. Everybody can remember the outrage and indignation when the police were caught on video beating up this guy Rodney King, and you know, they saw excessive use of force that wasn't necessary, and the whole country was up in arms. Now you can turn on Google or YouTube, and you can see numerous acts of murder, homicide, manslaughter by the police. And this is, you know, it's not acceptable. And we have to get after their bosses, the people who direct them and train them, and the people who make sure that they get sent to Israel for training. I mean, we are tolerating intolerable things of incredible disrespect. You know, all I'm saying is, don't piss in my face and tell me it's raining, all right? I won't tolerate that. I know what's happening. I know what's being done to our young. I know what's being done to dumb us down. And it's up to us to pick up the ball and carry on the efforts that and the sacrifices that the founding fathers have made toward the great idea of America. Gee, I wish I brought my notes. There's so many things to cover. Oh, all right. In my neighborhood, the town supervisor, Christopher St. Lawrence, has just been indicted on a 22-count indictment. They found him guilty of 20 counts of security and wires fraud. It looks like he's going to jail, all right? His lawyer, in his quasi-government creation, which was a Ponzi scheme, a major Ponzi scheme, he fell on his sword. Alan Trudler, he's a lawyer, and he was disbarred. He pleaded guilty. He was facing 25 years, same charges, and he was promised, or he was told, that if he cooperates, he could end up maybe with just 2 or 3 years for good behavior and cooperating with the government. They really wanted to get the town supervisor, and so he did that. And then the town attorney took the fifth 3 times before the judge said, hey, I'm not having this. I'm going to invoke law such and such. I'm granting you immunity. So now you have to testify. But you better tell the truth, because if you don't, we're going to hit you with everything you just told us. So he actually took the fifth. Now, I went to the town hall meeting and I told the town board, I said, all of you should have shame. You should be ashamed of yourself, but you have no shame. And they use their, they are a minority in our community. And the way they control the swing vote is simple. In 2007, my cousin ran for town supervisor. We got 11,000 votes, and we raised $80,000 in contrast to the supervisor, who was getting $2,000 to $4,000 contributions toward his campaign. And with all that, he ended up with 12,000 votes. We ended up with 11. And then the bloc, the Jewish, Zionist, ultra-Orthodox, who vote exactly the way their rabbi tells them to, voted with their 3,000 votes, and they got away with 15,000 to our 11,000. It's that simple. So it's all about divide and conquer.
Rudy, if you could, I'm asking a question, don't say that. Rudy, I guess what you might have said specifically about the 911A.
Oh, the 911 was, I was there, I heard the explosion. I got there in time for Building 7, and I heard the explosion, I saw it come down. It was blown up. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist, just go back and look at the buildings. The first 2 towers that went down, they're clearly blowing up from the top down in a classical controlled demolition where each explosion has to be within milliseconds. And you see the squibs, you see it blowing out. It's throwing big, giant steel girders out 70 feet, 100 feet in a lateral projection. That's not a collapse, people. And as you looked at the towers, they're blowing up from the top, but they're rock solid on the bottom, right? They're blowing up. If you look at Building 7, it was blown up in one shot. It was boom. And then the whole building came down, just like this, as if you pulled the carpet out from under it. There's no question. I work with architects and engineers, Richard Gage, who he took on a very difficult and dangerous job. That is, he put his license, he put his career online to speak against the government and stand up for what they saw. And eventually he's gotten over 2,500 architects and engineers who stepped forward to tell us that that was not what the government said it was. It was not what the NIST report and the 9/11 Commission told us. And those are all traitors too. All right? Anytime we have anyone who tells us that Israel is our friend, he's a traitor. Israel is our worst enemy. Our worst enemy. And I guess, because of my losses on 9/11, I can never forget my fellow firefighters who I personally knew. Tommy O'Hagan, Kenny Kumpel, and Bruce Van Hines. I went to their funerals, and if I talk about it too much, it'll make me cry again. But extraordinary human beings and role models, really, Sometimes you meet somebody that you know is on the way to bigger and better things. That was Tommy O'Hagan. It's just been, I guess in a way my life has been blessed in terms of being around people who were so positive. I met so many great, great people in the fire department. And that's a profession where all those guys, and I'll tell you a little secret about the fire department, they meet my definition of heroes. A hero is somebody who has great fear and yet overcomes that fear. And these guys that you see popping into the buildings, they're afraid. And I'll tell you something about fire. Fire is the only thing that can produce such terror that people just get a little bit of feed and a little bit of heat and they'll jump out the window. You can stand on the 5th floor and put a gun to somebody's head and tell them, jump or I'll shoot you. You're going to have to shoot him. All right? But fire engenders that kind of terror. These guys, I found, in the fire department, we're very close. We know each other's children. We know each other's family. And we know the dedication that the fathers put into their children's future and education. These guys are incredible. It's really still difficult to talk about it, but I know that a lot of them, these guys who go in there for a complete stranger and put their life on the line, right? They have a family too that loves them, that needs them. And yet they'll put their life on the line for a complete stranger. That to me is incredible.
Thank you for sharing. My question is, you're having regular medical checkups. Does exposure to radiation or included in your medical checkups or any of your friends?
Nobody talks about that. That's a taboo thing. The main thing they're sticking with is, the nanothermite and so on. And then you have people that, try to avoid the divisive, different manners that have been, techniques that have been explained as being part of bringing the buildings down.
Okay, well, my next question is, I'll predicate this on what I experienced. What did you hear? Because I lived 10 miles away in Union, New Jersey. I was in my basement, and I had felt an earthquake. 10 years prior, I could feel the foundation of my house talk to me with a rumble. 3 minutes before the first tower fell, I heard a pop and sizzle that was loud enough to come from the foundation of my house. I heard that, and something told me that is no normal explosion. That was a nuke.
I try to stay away from that because if I publicly acknowledge that, then I, give way to the division. And as a former police officer and a fire marshal trained, let me correct one thing. I'm trained. I'm a fully trained fire marshal. And I was due to put my hand up on Friday. I was called up on Monday to arrive and put my hand up and say I do at the fully trained background check, psychologicals, everything, right? Which had never happened in the history of the department. And we were called up on a Wednesday and we were told the promotions were not going down. I put down $10,000 of my own money, and we got together. We immediately hired counsel, and we were the first time in the history of the city that the workers were able to get a stay on the actions of the city against the workers. And I also got on the phone, and my brothers paid me back the money I laid out because we needed it immediately. And that was around the change when Giuliani came on the scene. So when Giuliani came on the scene, the vote went to him, the support went to him, and it was taken out of the judge's hands. And for the first time in history, we weren't promoted. I was number 7 on a list of 200. So, that's what happened in regards to that. Please ask me questions to keep me on track, because there's so much to talk about, and I'd be happy to answer questions. In respect to your feeling the rumble, you can go on YouTube and you can hear brothers telling you that right there. My wife worked at the bank just a few blocks away. She came out just a few minutes before the first building got hit, right, or exploded. And she could smell the fuel, the jet fuel. She told me she could see the papers coming down. And she asked the guy in the store across the street, is there a back way out? Because he advised everybody, don't go out the front door. It was right across the street from the towers. So she went a couple of blocks to her job, which was the bank, and then she went up to the 23rd floor. And from there, she could see the second plane coming in, and they were all sent to the basement where they had a bunker. And she said she felt the impact too. But what you specifically addressed, yes, there were firefighters and people who were in the building who addressed exactly what you just spoke about, okay? So, but I don't want to stir up a mess by saying, oh, gee, nanothermite is out. A lot of work has been done, peer reviews have been done to show that, yes, nanothermite was used. As to your question, it's very possible that other means were used, all right?
12 miles away.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with William Rodriguez, the janitor, and he said there's explosions in the basement?
Yes. And I was also there in 1993 when they had the first bombing. I was there with the FBI, and they were going around picking up little chips, with tweezers and putting it into a little jar. I said, what are you doing? He says, well, that's a paint chip. And with our forensic, we can tell you what kind of make and model it belongs to. That's the kind of investigatory tools that we possess in forensics right now. So, yeah. Am I over time?
Yeah, 2 minutes left.
All right, 2 minutes. And here I am talking ahead of the... Huh? All right, yeah. But I'm on the stage here talking in front of the great Ken O'Keefe. What am I doing here? Ken O'Keefe is here, But all I can do is share my personal experiences, and my experiences are your experiences. And I think the only reason I've gotten credibility is not just for name recognition because of my being a policeman and a firefighter and all that, is because I've gotten traction from the public, because the public realizes what I'm talking about is the actual truth. And I don't fear them. I don't fear anybody. What I do fear is falling into the category, as stated, the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but the spirit that dies within us while we still live. I'd rather die standing on my feet than live on my knees. And as George Patton once said, the object of war is not to die for what you believe in. It's to make the other son of a bitch die for what he believes in.